Hi students, in this video I'm going to just introduce some of the themes that we're going to focus on over this course. So welcome to week one. This week we're mostly introducing ourselves, getting to know each other, getting to know the discipline of history, and then next week we're really going to begin our study of the US history from 1860 until the present. And these are the main themes that I want you to be thinking about, that I want you to look out for as we move through the course. First theme is the theme of growth. This is a period of American history where we're going to see continued growth in different areas over the course of the period that we're studying. So this begins with size. The United States continues to expand its territory during this period, especially in the second half of the 19th century. And by the early 20th century, all 50 states that we know today have been added, along with some dependent territories. It's also a period during which the population of the United States grows extremely quickly, both in terms of natural reproduction of the existing population, but also high rates of immigration, both from Europe and from other parts of the world. It's a period during which the American economy increases and grows significantly to become the most powerful economy in the world, to become more powerful than a number of other economies in the world combined. The period of this course is a period where we see the growth of American influence around the world, in World War I, World War II, in the Cold War, in the years after the Cold War. We continue to see the growth of American influence in countries around the world, in countries and regions throughout the world. And so we start to move beyond the borders of the United States in looking at the influence of the philosophies and culture of the United States. One other area in where we see growth in the history of the United States during this period is the expansion of government influence. And we see this beginning in the 20th century. It's partly a response to the rise of big business that I'll talk about in a second, but we start to see the rise of the progressive movement. We start to see efforts to use the government to establish justice and reform in American society. So we see this in the progressive movement in the 1920s. We see the expansion of government influence again in the 1930s with the New Deal and in World War II. And then we see it again in the 1960s with Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. And we see this expansion of government continue even after the Great Society. That's the last standout program. But we do see the continued expansion of the influence of American government during this period. In terms of the culture, we see a centralization. We see that businesses are becoming bigger and becoming more powerful. We start to see monopolies and billion-dollar companies developing during this period, nationwide businesses. We also see a nationwide media emerge, and the creation of an American cultural experience that's much more uniform across the different states and the different regions of the country than had been the case previously. A couple of other themes to think about. So we have this theme of growth in the nation of the United States, in its influence more widely spread, in the growth of the government and its influence in people's lives. Centralization of American culture, the creation of a nationwide culture. Two other themes to think about are the civil rights movement. We're going to trace the passage and the development of civil rights for African Americans during this period, beginning with Reconstruction and leading through the 1960s and the 1960s civil rights movement. And we're going to look at the different ways in which the African American population develops its relationship with the government of the United States. And lastly, although this is a time of growth and a time of cultural centralization, socially it's also a time of rebellion. And we see this in the 20s and in the 60s. Socially, we see people rebelling against established social norms and trying to forge new standards for society. but also towards the end of the course, we'll see a conservative revival, the emergence of a conservative movement that resists these social rebellions of the 20s and 60s, and also resists the growth of federal government, seeing the expansion of the federal government as a violation of the independence and of the freedom that the United States, the identity of the United States was based upon. So these are the themes that we're going to explore over the period of this course. I hope you enjoy it. It's a fascinating history.